All men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights.
Life, liberty, and the
If liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear.
Make America great again.
The Big Mig.
Welcome back to the Big Mig Show, and good morning. I'm your host, Lance Migliaccio, with my co-host, George Ballantine. Rise and grind, tip of the spear, and if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. For our regular visitors and guests, thank you so very much. We appreciate you guys tuning in and always supporting us. And if you're joining us for the very first time, this is the Truth Network for sure. You know how we do it. It's always going to be the edge of the knife here. We're always going to drop those truth bombs. So it's not mainstream media. If you're looking for lies, you might be at the wrong spot. George B., what's up, bro? How are you, man?
I'm good, chilling. I don't know. Took my mom to early. She had a blood appointment, so then we went out to breakfast.
Oh,
good times, man. Good times.
You've been moving and shaking from an early point. Of course,
Every day. That's my life.
Both of us doing that. Now, listen, if you like the show, you know the drill. Thumbs up, comment, share, and subscribe. If you can do the paid subscription, support the show. We're trying to grow that subscriber base. It's great to have that money coming in because we have regular bills that come in every month. So thank you for the people that have subscribed this week already. We really appreciate that. Our subscriber base has been growing, and our follower base has been growing. That's probably because of you guys, of course, sharing our live links, sharing our content, and telling people, hey, this is a great show. Come and watch it. So that's a great compliment. Thank you very much for doing that. And of course, Rumble Rant tips are always appreciated. We also have the new Rumble crypto wallet up there. If you decide you want to throw George 10 or 15 Bitcoin, feel free to do so. He's still waiting for somebody to do that. And of course, don't forget, if you like Rumble, if you love Rumble, Rumble paid subscriptions, we're Perplexity now. Lots of great features coming on board for those paid subscribers. So it's a great way to really support one of the only free speech platforms out there. So. All right. Well, listen, we've got a great show for you today. I'm really excited about it, of course, as always. Before we kick it off, let's thank our sponsors. George and I are gold and silver guys. We're crypto guys. Let's take a look at this baby. Of course, I'm holding up the Prepper Bar, great invention from the guys at Genesis Gold Group. You can snap off a small piece to make a payment. It's a 62.2 gram Prepper Bar, perforated, as I just said, and easily broken down in your choice of 3 different denominations. Of course, fits a multitude of needs: diversification, asset protection from inflation, economic turmoil, or its very unique utility for barter and trade. It's a perfect gift. Listen, nobody's not going to not like getting gold and silver. I've said it before. I still have gold and silver from when I was a kid that my dad gave me. I've held on to it this whole time, probably going to hand it down to my daughter unless there's an emergency use for it. Just one of those things you buy and hold it. Grab a few of these, stick them in a sock drawer, a safety deposit box, you name it, anywhere that you feel safe to put a few. Great to have a fall black plan just in case. Head over to thebigmigbar.com, thebigmigbar.com. Order a few of these today. They come with an assay report, so don't worry about any counterfeit gold coming out of Genesis Gold Group. And here's your promo code for your newbies out there. All caps Prepper, PREPPR. That's PREPPR. Going to get you 10% off on the silver, 5% off on the gold. Thebigmigbar.com. You can head over there with that QR code, take a snapshot, but I recommend you go there after the show. You're not going to want to miss any of this because, like you saw in the advertising, emergency broadcast, thebigmigbar.com.
Lance, I keep telling you, it's not snap. It's break me off a piece of that Prepper Bar.
Yeah,
keep
you
saying
gotta
snap.
get jingling. I guess I've got snap in my head because I always think about cracking something like that. I'll have to work on it for you, George, just so I can get in sync.
Talking about snapping a couple politicians' necks, perhaps.
Well, look, we've talked about it. You guys know I have a pretty extensive, combat sports background. I've done lots of martial arts, and I felt like I should share something in case you run into Adam Schiff or maybe some of the other congressional members. I feel like make the first strike. This might be the plan to do so. This is a highly skilled individual I found a video of last night. And I think talking's done. I'm not sure that talking's doing it. I suggest that one of these specific strikes might be the best way to have that meeting go. congressional members, watch out. We're going to train our Big Mig Mafia.
You get the hint?
I think they get the point, the groin strike. Saw that last night and I was like, great. You know, maybe they'll pay attention to us. But, you know, this isn't a light day for me. You know, when I contacted this guest and we started to talk about what's going on, it's really, it's downright frightening. You know, you hear these stories, you look online, you've seen some images that aren't in fact real, and then there's plenty of stuff that is real. And this is really, really important. And I think you guys today, you don't get me get too serious. A lot of times I try to keep things light. We have lots of great guests. Dane, is joining us today, Wigington. And I've got to tell you that what you're going to hear today is pretty unnerving. And I think for you in the audience, you just have to recognize that what we're looking at here is really an emergency. Weather warfare, climate collapse. You guys have seen it in your own areas. You know it's happening. I mean, I live in, as you guys know, in the socialist state of Denver. And it's gotten drier and drier here. It's amazing. You see large swathes of our trees up in the mountains that are dying. They talk about the beetles. Well, the beetles are successfully attacking the forest here because of the weather. Used to be you would get this cold weather here and it would freeze and kill any of the bugs that were attacking the trees. Now it doesn't get cold enough to do that. And, you know, they talk about the reasoning behind it. They want to blame you for it, but that's not really the situation. So Dane, let me give you some background here. He's an environmental activist, researcher, and lead administrator of geoengineeringwatch.org. You got to look at that site. Ton of information on there. You want to get through the bullshit? That's the place to go, geoengineeringwatch.org. He's best known for his work investigating and opposing what he describes as a covert global climate engineering operation, often referred to in public discourse as chemtrails or solar geoengineering programs. Got a background in solar energy, previously worked for Bechtel Power Corporation, was a licensed contractor in California and Arizona. He's managed a wildlife preserve near Lake Shasta in Northern California for over 20 years. He's focused on researching alleged large-scale atmospheric spraying and its impact on the environment, health, and climate. He's the executive producer of the documentary The Dimming and has authored works including Geoengineering, A Chronicle of Indictment. He's appeared in interviews, podcasts, and media discussions. You've seen him on Tucker Carlson, lots of others. He produced a great documentary called The Dimming. This is serious stuff, really. And, you know, and I think I make sure that this show, I never really say this, I ask you to do it, but I'm telling you, make sure you share this far and wide. We really got to wake some people up. There is an awful operation going on, and it's something that I think everybody needs to get involved in. Let's bring Dane in. There's no reason leaving backstage.
Welcome to the Big Mig Show, Dane Wigington. Is that how you say it, Wigington?
Wigington. Close enough, George.
That's what I said, Wigington. The accent.
All good. All good, brother. All good.
Dane, thank you so very much for joining us. You know, I got to say that this is a disturbing topic. You know, a lot of times, you know, we have lots of great information we bring on lots of experts. But after engaging with you, you know, I started to look around even more and I got even more concerned. You know, let me start with this. I always ask people this. What, you know, a lot of us stood on the sidelines. I mean, George and I really weren't political until probably about 2009, maybe a little bit before. And we just got tired of watching what was going on. And then we started to really, you know, go all in on our social media. Got attacked and banned for it, got suspended with Donald Trump, had all kinds of stuff happen. But my question is, what got you started down this path? Can you explain to the audience? I know you've told me, but I want you to share because everybody likes to know, okay, what kind of weaponized me? What made me decide I couldn't stand on the sidelines any longer?
When I grew up in Southern California, very smoggy, very difficult place to live. The smog was as thick as fog in that era. All I could think about, Lance, was getting out of that environment. And by the time I finally got to Northern California, thought I would be in a clean environment, clean air, clean skies. I have a background with Bechtel Power in renewable energy. I built a large off-grid home. It was the cover article of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. I expected to find clean air. When I began to lose 50, 60, 70% of my solar power uptake on some days from whatever these aircraft were emitting, I knew that couldn't be condensation. And when I began to research, I was shocked at the amount of data on climate engineering, solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection. Those are the terms for what's taking place in our skies. And I was shocked that I hadn't really, in our industry, seen or heard anything about that before that time. I began to test precipitation to see if climate engineering elements were coming down in the rain, starting with aluminum nanoparticles. Aluminum is toxic to all life forms, for those that don't know. And after 18 months of research and realizing these programs were absolutely deployed, ongoing, no public disclosure, no environmental impact report, anything, what was I to do? I didn't want to do this for the last 20 plus years, but this is an immediate existential threat. It's destroying what's left of the planet's life support systems. It's contaminating every single breath we take, every drop of rain, every bite of food. Is this not a fight for life?
You know, and what was unnerving about my conversation with you is that the way you were talking, I could tell in your tone when you said to me, listen, we're not, this is serious. We're like, a lot of people are thinking we have decades ahead of us where we might be able to get this fixed or figure out why somebody would want to do this. And before I dig into that part, you know, here's the part I couldn't figure out, right? And I still don't have it figured out. Clearly, they've kind of lost control of this. I don't know what they were thinking. You know, they tried with the pandemic. We've always heard about, eugenics and how they want to minimize it. They've reduced the nutritional quality of our food. Our food supply seems to be tainted. We've had some experts come on and talk about even the food supply they're feeding the military, extremely tainted, the chemicals that are in it. And you can kind of see it. You can see that people have gotten less healthy. You know, even as a child, and of course, I see the pictures from the 50s, and you look at even the beach photos from the 60s and 70s. People didn't look like they do. They seem to be so much unhealthier. They're obese. We look at that. But what I really talked to you about that, and the answer you gave me was downright frightening. I said, I can't figure out, though. They're doing this to the entire planet. That means they're going to be impacted also. And I've always thought about this and discussed it on the show, the nefarious operation of, like the Federal Reserve Bank and the people that are really in power, in the planet. They say there's about 150 actual men that are really running the operation, that most politicians, the majority of politicians are installed. We see the control. And I asked you, I want you to give the same answer to the audience. Why the hell would somebody do this when they have to recognize that they're killing the planet even for themselves, that there's a serious problem, that they've kind of lost control of this. And you gave me an answer that was disturbing. Would you share that with the audience now?
Well, first, you're correct on all counts. I would agree with you on all counts as far as who's actually pulling the strings in this puppet show. And many people simply deny this issue completely because they can't get their arms around why, quote, they would do this to themselves. And who are they? You described them already. Those who control the flow of money, those who print money from thin air and control from behind the curtain. But they look at this as a risk-to-risk scenario. This is a covert weapon of control. It's the crown jewel weapon of control for the controllers, the weapon with which they have been and are bringing populations to their knees without those populations ever even knowing they're under assault, because they can blame nature for whatever happens from a weather standpoint. So again, the point I think you're referring to is when I referred to the power structure being comparable to a cancer. And does a cancer intend to kill its host? No, a cancer intends to proliferate unchecked. The host eventually dies. And I would argue we have a headless, heartless, soulless cancer right now that is only focused on preserving its power, preserving its control, even if they only have the ashes to rule over. And again, if we look at what they've already done to themselves, this is important for people to understand because we already have those examples. They detonated over 2,400 nuclear bombs, which contaminated everything on the planet. Didn't they know that nuclear bombs worked after maybe a few dozen? They kept going. Project Starfish Prime, then Project Fishbowl. Those are the theatrical names they give to the detonation of hydrogen bombs in the magnetosphere. they thought that it could collapse the entire atmosphere. Did that stop them from doing that? No. We have Fukushima, triple nuclear meltdown, no technology to fix it, no end in sight. That by itself is an ELE, extinction level event, if other factors don't do the job first, which I would argue will certainly be the case. So we have 442 nuke plants around the globe. We have 60 more under construction, and every single one of them will go into meltdown as the current paradigm collapses. So we're going to have Fukushima times several hundred. We're in an incredibly dark corner, and they are so desperate. And I'll leave it with this, Lance. Those in power are so desperate that now they're openly discussing. And you said they don't have a handle on what they're doing in the skies. You're completely correct. This is more of a climate chaos creation. Yes, they can wreak havoc from a climate standpoint, but they're destroying what's left of the planet's life support systems. There is no equilibrium left. So there's circles in Washington openly discussing what they see as a benefit of a limited nuclear exchange to mimic the short-term toxic cooling effects of a volcano in order to slow the warming of the planet, which climate engineering, by the way, is making worse, not better. And this final point is important. The stated purpose for solar radiation management, stratospheric aerosol injection, cloud albedo enhancement, the science terms, is to slow the warming of the planet, to mitigate the warming of the planet. All they can do is create, just like a pharmaceutical for the human body, treat the symptom, kill the host. That's exactly what they're doing. Short-term toxic cool downs at the cost of ensuring nobody gets out alive.
You know, and for everybody out there, of course, a lot of us could argue, well, I'm old, it's not going to matter for me, but you have to think about your children and your grandchildren and the next generations. And, you know, I've said it many times that this nefarious operation, everybody likes to call it the deep state. I don't even think that's a competent, you know, nameology for that. It really isn't, because it's much more nefarious. I've said it often that I think that people in so many governments are compromised, but let's talk about some of the stuff you brought out on March 7th, Global Alert News. You just broke down the deadly storms and tornadoes ripping through the U.S. People have seen it. Now, I don't get that in Colorado. We get as crazy amounts of dry weather. We have had some extreme, you know, storms here and there, but I mean, this is basically straight up weaponized weather from climate engineering programs. Maybe you can name those programs. You guys have referred to them as chemtrails. George, we got a picture. I'm sure everybody knows what a chemtrail looks like at this point, but we've seen them zigzagging. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And Dane's got a crazy amount of information. They always say those are contrails. They tell you that this is a normal process of a jet engine, that the people that are saying it's a chemtrail are incorrect, and Dane's going to give you that information here now.
If it was normal, how come you don't see them all the time with a jet engine when planes are in the air?
Very valid point, George. Exactly.
Ain't normal.
So can you break that down? Because people hear this, right? We've heard about HARP as an example. We've heard about the weaponization of weather against foreign governments. We've heard the rumors. They've never completely acknowledged it here in the government, but they're having a lot of early discussions. You provided that dimming, but take it from there, Dane, and talk about March 7th and talk about what you're seeing as far as maybe like things like chemical ice nucleation, things like that.
Let me back into this. First, the whole condensation trail narrative is perhaps one of the greatest deceptions ever perpetrated on populations. Anybody with a still functioning sense of reason can see that there is something very wrong in our skies. And we've captured up close film footage of these aircraft at altitude, nozzles visible, turning on and off. End of the debate. There's no debate. This is not condensation. We see grid patterns one day, non-commercial flight routes, aircraft turning dispersions on and off, and nothing the next on a day that might be even more conducive for anything that could occur naturally, which is unlikely because all military tankers and all commercial aircraft are high bypass turbofan jet engines. That's a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through that engine is not combusted, meaning it's nearly incapable of producing condensation trails except under rare and extreme circumstances. And the atmosphere is warming so radically and rapidly, and that is making the conditions for any naturally occurring condensation trail less likely, not more likely. Again, anybody that can't see there's something going on in our skies is asleep at the wheel, completely comatose at the wheel. So again, there's no rational denial of what's happening in our skies. There's just a program denial. If we look at the term chemtrails, I would encourage people, if you're trying to introduce this issue to others, avoid that term like the plague. Anybody who Googles that term by design will come straight to conspiracy theory, hoax. That's all by design. It's okay in private conversation, but nowhere else. If we stick to the science terms, they can't marginalize us, and it works. Believe me, if you go see a legislator, and I deal with congressmen and senators and other state officials often, and state agencies and officials have a standard boilerplate form. If you mention the term chemtrails, they will give you that sheet. Conspiracy theory, hoax, thank you very much, goodbye. If you stick to the science terms, they can't do that. So again, we're playing chess. We need to learn how to play well. And if I could back up a little further, Lance, on what you said, that some people are trying to convince themselves that this issue may be serious, but it won't affect them, maybe only their children, couldn't be further from the truth. This issue and the destruction it has caused, along with other human factors, again, I don't want to deny that. That's important that we acknowledge we've been really, really bad stewards of this planet. We have trashed it from 1,000 different directions, and we're not denying that at geoengineeringwatch.org. But what we're saying is when you intentionally intervene with these systems on top of all that, we go from the frying pan into the fire. And so if we look at this statistically, it's here. We're in the throes of collapse right now. We're circling the drain right now. A few statistics, and I'll give it back to you, Lance. Insect populations globally down 80 to 90%. That's terrestrial and aquatic. We have peer-reviewed study from the Atlantic. Plankton populations down in 500 locations measured, 90% decline. No plankton, no people, no insects, no people. Wildlife populations conservatively down 75% in the last 40 years alone and plummeting by the day. Tree cover is down about 68-9% from pre-civilization. No trees, no people. Ozone layer. We're told the ozone layer is getting better. And by the way, Lance, we're told in the ozone layer it was the hairspray cans that did the damage there, right? No. There's CFCs are damaging, but that's literally a paper cup full of water compared to a tidal wave, and the tidal wave is climate engineering. Climate engineering is destroying the ozone layer. All of these factors are existential threats in and of themselves, and they're all converging at once. So we're getting UVC on the surface right now. UVC is a DNA damaging spectrum of radiation. That's indicative of an ozone layer that's near functional collapse, and climate engineering is the core causal factor there too. So again, anybody who thinks this is not going to hit in their lifetimes, they must not be planning to be around much longer because it's here.
Well, so I have a question. You said not to use the terminology chemtrails?
Not if you're dealing with any agency official, any media source.
What's the word to use?
Climate engineering is very clear. And climate engineering is not weather modification. I want to make that clear.
So we're saying when you're talking about the planes in the skies, you see the stuff trailing from them, what they're dropping, you want to use climate engineering, right? Okay.
Climate engineering is clear. It's technically, they call, geoengineering is a term applies that they intentionally make that confusing. Geoengineering sounds almost like something to do with earthwork, but solar radiation management. But to make one point very clear too, because they are intentionally trying to blur the line between localized, publicized cloud seeding operations and climate engineering. They couldn't be more different. You're comparing an ant to an elephant. Localized, publicized cloud seeding operation, which everybody knows exists. That's typically a single engine, propeller driven airplane with a few flares on the wings. They can disperse perhaps a few dozen pounds of material. A fully loaded KC-135 can drop something a little south of 100 tons in a single payload. And we're talking about massive amounts of material. It takes a massive amount of material to cover the whole skyline. And George and Lance, you guys have seen these opaque skies, right? Where the entire skyline is completely covered. You've seen that, right?
Yeah.
Always. So we worked with the University of Minnesota, about 500 lab tests, extrapolated how much material was in that precipitation, rain testing, and projected that globally. It appears something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons of toxic nanoparticles are being sprayed annually. 40 to 60 million tons.
This is
Lance,
obviously a very expensive operation.
I got to ask a question.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the $1 million question. Why are they doing this?
Again, as I stated earlier, the stated purpose is to slow the warming of the planet, to mimic the short-term toxic cooling effects of a volcanic eruption. And we now know from the most recent published studies as well, volcanic eruptions, again, it is a short-term cooling followed by an even worsened warming. No surprise, just the same here. This is just like a pharmaceutical commercial. Again, you take this for that symptom, and by the way, here's 20 or 30 or 40 side effects, which are really actual effects. And then they have a host of treatments for that too. The same is true here. In fact, as they're destroying parts of the planet's life support systems, and we have gases like methane that are saturating the atmosphere that are related to what these programs have made worse, not better. Now there's other programs. If we go deeper, you mentioned HARP, Lance.
Yes.
That's an ionosphere heater. That's a weapon of mass destruction. HARP is used to manipulate atmospheric pressure zones. But now we have other frequency transmissions. There's two projects, Alamo and Lucy. Those are acronyms. They're microwaving the atmosphere with opposing frequencies in a desperate, dangerous attempt to try to degrade some of the atmospheric methane with even more downstream consequences like the pharmaceutical I mentioned earlier. So it's a free-for-all of insanity in our skies.
You know, this is clearly a very expensive operation. We talk about, on this show, we've talked about many times dark budgets and black budgets. I've talked about some of the work I did years ago and how those operations were funded. You could see the money laundering. I mean, you know, prohibitively expensive here. Do you believe, or have you ever connected that the U.S. government's missing funds, you know, these massive, operations like USAID, or where the Pentagon can't identify where $2.2 trillion went? Is that where we're getting the funding from for a lot of this stuff? Are they paying for it through missing money?
Yes, Black Ops money, and the missing Pentagon money was somewhere north of about $31 trillion. So, and that's just what we know about. Where did that money come from in the first place? And yeah, they can print whatever they want. The expense of these programs is definitely way into the trillions. And we know we have intergovernmental cooperation. We know that from even government documents. We have one Senate document from 1978, 800 pages long. Mm-hmm. We've highlighted the more important sections so people don't have to go through all of it. But even the document that old highlights the, quote, intergovernmental cooperation between otherwise adversarial nations with these programs because of the cross-border ramifications. You can't just geoengineer over your own country. They are absolutely, just like they were with CV-19, they are all absolutely a part of this insanity, all for their own purposes.
Now, Lance, hold on. I gotta go back to the global warming thing. So, a couple questions. They say trying to do this for global warming. Now, we know the Earth goes in cycles as far as climate or temperatures. That's I believe a proven fact. So, you know, when the Earth is, they say when its axis is tilted towards the sun, the temperature changes, and when it's tilted away, it changes, and you know that goes in, I forget how many year cycles. Is it really warming, or is this just some BS thing? Because you see the solar like the caps, they say they're melting, but then they got records of inches of snow and ice on top of it. So you have one group says one thing, another group says the other thing. So I'm just trying to get in the middle of the truth.
I understand. I would encourage everybody not to believe me or anyone else, but to believe what they see with their own eyes. There are documentaries like Chasing Ice. Excellent documentary you can find online. Film footage, no agenda. You can see with your own eyes. The cryosphere is imploding. The planet's not just warming. It's in total meltdown. And I'm not an Al Gore fan. I want to make that clear. Gore is part of the problem. All the environmental groups, part of the problem. They won't admit to climate engineering because they don't want to lose their 501c3 nonprofit. We know that because our attorneys at geoengineeringwatch.org spoke to attorneys from WWF, Greenpeace, Sierra Club, all of them. Cowards, criminal cowards. They won't admit to this issue because they don't want to lose their nonprofits. But again, as far as the cyclical pattern of the planet, we're in the elliptical phase of the orbit right now, which means the planet should have been and would have been and was cooling, not warming. And now the warming is far beyond anything we're being told. We had winter temperatures in Texas. We just had this 106 degrees in February in Texas. How many people know that? Lance and George, you remember?
They also had snow in parts of Texas and snow in Florida, which they don't really have. So
they did, exactly. And that's climate engineering. And it's to create exactly the impression that it sounds like it gave you. That's exactly why they do that. So when it was snowing, when it was just snowing in Florida this year, what didn't they tell us? Oh yeah, it was snowing in Florida. It was colder in Florida. That's a shallow layer of surface cold. It was colder in Florida than it was in Greenland and Iceland. You guys remember on January 21st of last year, interesting date, January 21st, right after the new group took over. Not that there's any difference between the two sides, but you guys remember the blizzard in New Orleans, right?
Yeah.
New Orleans, Florida. What didn't they tell us then? While it was blizzarding in New Orleans, it was above freezing and raining. And same day in Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, nobody said a word. You guys remember when the deep freeze in Texas 4 years ago?
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
While it was below zero in Dallas, it was 33 degrees warmer at the North Pole, above freezing in winter at the North Pole. So again, people need to look past their doorstep and these chemical cool downs, and that's exactly what they are. They can search Chinese scientists engineer snowstorm. They'll find all U.S. media covered it, all international media covered it, MSNBC, CNN, Popular Science, The Guardian. But you bring it up here, suddenly you're wearing a tinfoil hat. These are patented processes. You guys, in your first aid kit, you have an ice pack. Excuse me. Breathing too much of this particulate matter in our air. But you have a first aid kit that you can mix the chemicals together. You have ice instantly, right?
Yeah.
It's called an endothermic reaction. That's an energy absorbing reaction. You guys are certainly, from your background, you're familiar with an exothermic reaction. It's an explosive energy releasing. This is the opposite of that. Extremely powerful components. So they can literally turn what should have been a liquid precipitation event into a frozen precipitation event, creates a cold insulator of air that sinks to the surface. They sensationalize the headlines. Look at all the cold blizzards in Florida. Sure, it's 80 degrees the day after, but nobody seems to care. They don't seem to connect those dots. That cool down was not nature, it was climate engineering. So again, as you said, George, yes, there's cyclical patterns in the planet's lifespan, but nothing like this has happened in the Earth's geologic past within hundreds of times the speed of what's happening now, the warming, and it is warming. So we could compare this to people die, that's natural. We all die, right? If you run someone over in a crosswalk, they're going to die a whole lot faster. So when people try to make the argument that what's happening to the planet now is natural, that's like saying running someone over in a crosswalk, beating them, stabbing them, burning them, shooting them, and saying, hey, they died of a heart attack. Natural, right? It doesn't. It's not the case now. We have totally foobarred this planet.
It's listening to you talk, and I think about the individuals behind this. And most people in regular walks of life don't recognize the urgency of this. And sometimes I'm one of them. You see so much material online that's so, it's so, confusing. I'm going to use the word confusing, but it's intentionally confusing. It's just like the division and chaos they use on us. All right, I know we've got to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about really what's the end game, They keep playing God with our atmosphere. Where are we going to be at? We're going to talk about some of the testing that Dane's done. We're going to play a clip from his movie. So stay tuned. This is an important episode, something that we really do want you to share far and wide. You don't see us normally hyping emergency broadcast. You don't ever see us do that. If you look through all our thumbnails on Rumble, you're not going to see us do that. This is an emergency. It is really important. So stay tuned. The Big Mink Show. I'll be right back with Dane Wigington and, of course, George Valentine and myself, Lance Miliaccio.
Don't go nowhere.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At CSPOA.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever. Visit CSPOA.org and join the Sheriff's Citizens Posse today. Make a difference. Stand for freedom. That's CSPOA.org. Your country, your fight, your future.
What if you could predict your financial future? And what if you could trade on it? Introducing Block Trust IRA, the future in your hands. An astonishing 88,000 millionaires were created last year from the Bitcoin boom, and you could be next. Block Trust IRA is the only crypto management firm powered by AI-driven strategies ranked #1 in the world by Bitcoin Magazine. The Block Trust IRA platform is built for everyone, from first-time buyers to seasoned investors. Predictive AI technology that was once only reserved for insiders and elites is now available to you. It's time to leave the old buy and hold strategies behind. Your assets are protected with military-grade security, offline cold storage, and $200 million in insurance. Visit BlockTrustIRA.com to book your free consultation and ask how to claim up to $2,500 in deposit bonuses today. Bitcoin changed the game. AI changes the strategy.
Hi folks, I'm here today to introduce you to the Prepper Bar from PrepperBar.com, the most unique precious metals product we have seen in a long time. These 62-gram bars are perforated and easily broken down into your choice of 3 different sizes to fit a multitude of needs. Whether it be from asset protection from inflation, economic turmoil, or its unique utility for barter and trade, the Prepper Bar makes a perfect gift for all the precious metal lovers out there. Exclusively made here in the USA and selling out fast. Available in both gold and silver, these slim Prepper Bars fit neatly in your wallet, and their utility enables use in any situation.
Forged through rigorous training and honed by the finest instructors on Earth, these canine units serve beside our nation's warriors as they fight to preserve what we cherish. When these warriors complete their duty, the Warrior Dog Foundation provides them with a home deserving of the service they've given us all. At our state-of-the-art kennels, they receive rehabilitation and care suitable for heroes, because that's what they are. Be a part of giving them a future today. Visit warriordogfoundation.org.
Welcome back to the Big Mig Show. Here we host Lance Migliaccio, George Ballantine, and our guest, Dan Wigington. And I said it right, it's my accent. But don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, like, follow, share button. Come to the chat if you can. We got the Big Mig Mafia's in there. A lot of people are in there. Clear Bart, what's up? I see you in there. Airs Mommy, all you good people. But we have his documentary, so I'm going to play a couple minutes of it, and then I'll put it up later on the Big Mig documentary channel so you guys could watch it. Pretty cool, interesting stuff. You know, they call us conspiracy theorists, but guess what? You know, all those conspiracies have been coming true. I think we're at a 90-something% win rate here. So that new word, conspiracy theorists, just means it's true. They just don't want you to know it. I'm going to play this clip in a couple minutes.
Perhaps the greatest lie ever perpetrated on populations all over the world is the condensation trail lie. What we're seeing in our skies is not condensation. It's sprayed particulate dispersions with very few exceptions.
They shouldn't be there. Jet engines burn clean. So if there's anything coming out of them, it's an additive.
They're absolutely not contrails. Contrails do not linger, dissipate, and go into cloud coverage, period, in the report.
And I kept saying to people, you know, what is this? Because now the sky is no longer blue, it's starting to turn gray. And what I found was kind of like it was not socially acceptable. You know, we're all going to pretend this is not really happening. And I thought, oh, this is very bad.
Most are unfamiliar with a science term called global dimming.
That term refers to the amount of direct sunlight that no longer reaches the surface of the planet due to light scattering particles that are building up in the atmosphere. And although many of these particles are from industrialized pollution, the larger majority are from the ongoing climate engineering solar radiation management operations. This engine, a high bypass turbofan jet engine, this is the engine that is on all military tankers and all commercial carriers, is in essence a jet-powered fan. 90% of the air that moves through this engine is non-combusted. This engine by design is nearly incapable of producing any condensation trail except under rare and extreme circumstances. And again, we have film footage of aircraft flying at altitude with nozzles visible, turning on and off. That is the end of the argument. Since even before man could fly, there was an effort to try to modify the weather. We have weather modification patents going back 100 years plus.
These are historical films of what can be done with a biplane, a small biplane that carries a very small payload. And that much can be done. How much more can a fully loaded military tanker, KC-10, KC-135, C-17 Globemaster, how much more material can they put in the air? About 500 times more with a single tanker.
In regard to the condensation trail narrative, many refer back to the trails left by World War II bombers as proof that we are only seeing condensation trails in our skies. But geoengineeringwatch.org found on military archives film footage, which we posted, of World War II B-17s at altitude turning off a sprayed dispersion. We know that climate engineering was deployed immediately after World War II, so testing was absolutely ongoing. Clearly, these bombers were used for beta testing. Film footage proves it.
Weather was a weapon used over Vietnam. Would you expect that to be then deleted from the availability? No. To continue to expand the scientific aspects of it, to have.
All right, so you heard it. Jet engines burn clean. Nothing should be coming out from behind them. Yet, you see shit coming out behind them. Geoengineering, right? Geoengineering, that's what I got to say? Yeah.
Yeah.
Geoengineering.
So, for everybody out there that's going, oh, this can't possibly be true. It is true. Let's talk about the lab testing. You also got access to a plane that you'll probably, nobody ever again will get access to because you disclosed a lot of stuff. But I got to ask you something before we start that. I'm sure you've had contact with pilots. How many pilots do you think, and I asked you a question last night because I didn't know the answer. I said, was it only military planes or was it civilian and military planes? And you were very clear that it was both. First of all, shame on the pilots. You guys, you sons of bitches out there.
Do they even know they're doing it, the pilots? Maybe they have it rigged where it does it automatically. I don't know.
For the ones that know they're doing this, you should be refusing to do this. You shouldn't be doing it. But Dan, the great point George is making, it's exactly where I was going. How many of the pilots actually know they're participating? And let's talk about the military and civilian. And then, because I'm sure you've had contact with them. How many of them realize that they know what they're doing and they still did it, Dane?
They've contacted us, actually. And in the case, and George is correct, in the case of commercial pilots, we're not implicating them as being directly involved, but certainly many of them know. Those that don't know are simply eyes wide shut. It's like, how can a medical physician not know that the, quote, safe and effective concoctions that they inject in us are anything but safe and effective? How can they not know? Same scenario here. So we're passing on some of our printed materials. We have a 20-page fact and photo summary booklet that all the legislators get. It's very comprehensive. A lot of images that NASA's tried to take off their site. I mean, the satellite images that you can't deny is climate engineering. These pilots are leaving those booklets in pilot lunchrooms and so forth, the ones that know this is going on and are trying to wake up their colleagues. But again, these are automated systems on commercial aircraft. You guys might remember in about the year 2000 when suddenly the weight on an aircraft became a really big deal. You had to pay a lot more for any baggage you carried on and all that. That appears to be when the commercial fleet was more recruited into this effort. And we know commercial carriers are being used because we have film footage of commercial carriers, nozzles visible, turning on and off. So we know the plane's being used, but they're automated systems. We know the DoD has leased on some occasions.
Dane, let me ask you: How do they get the product onto those planes? Are they Are they doing it like it's fuel, and they're pumping in? They're putting it into the system. Who's actually loading these payloads in the commercial aircraft?
So many ways for them to do that simply and covertly. Even the septic systems that could pump into one holding tank and pump out of another with the same truck. They can. There's so many ways to do that, and those trucks have multi compartments on them too. So there's so many ways they can covertly do this with minimal knowledge from minimal people. And as far as those participating, even military pilots, we know they're not being told the gravity of this issue. Was the pilot in Vietnam being told, "Hey, spraying this Agent Orange is going to kill your pal on the ground, your fellow soldier in the ground"? No, they weren't told. Or look at the detonation of nuclear bombs. You guys have probably seen historical footage of the nuclear bomb detonations in Nevada, where the bomb goes off and the soldiers were told to jump out of the trench and run toward the blast site. Guess what? They all died a near-term, painful, protracted death. And they're cannon fodder for those in power, absolute cannon fodder. How many people know that the downwinders from the Nevada detonations, we have peer-reviewed study now, that somewhere in the range of 500 to 700,000 people are attributed as having eventually succumbed to diseases from the downwind radiation.
Yeah.
How many people know that? So again, people that think those in power are somehow here for our benefit, to protect us and our posterity, time to wake up, wake the hell up.
No, Operation Sea Spray that happened in San Francisco. You're probably familiar with that. Maybe share that with the audience. That operation, they knew what they were doing. They did it to see if they could actually have a controlled environment and what would be the impact of aerosol spraying. Can you explain that? If you know that operation, just tell the audience about it.
I know exactly what it is. And sea spray was only one example of as of 1977, according to sources like the Washington Post and others, the U.S. military, including Project Sea Spray, had conducted no less than 239 open-air biological tests on innocent, unknowing U.S. civilians. It's business as usual. So again, let's look at, if you guys have heard the name Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's the former presidential advisor from Johnson all the way up to when he died in 2017. What did he state in the record? Listeners can all look this up, very easy to find. He stated, quote, "With today's technology, it's far easier to kill 1 million people than to control them," quote, unquote. That is exactly the mentality we have. And as far as what we're breathing, and what makes this issue, again, I never wanted to do this for 20 plus years of my life, to completely put everything on hold. I have never left my post for 20 plus years. This is all I do 7 days a week. It's intolerable for me to not be able to breathe without sucking in toxic nanoparticles that are highly toxic in and of themselves: aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, graphene, surfactants. But when you combine these particles, you get what's known as synergistic toxicity. So in the case of mercury and aluminum, and no coincidence, mercury and aluminum were used in injections as adjuvants. When you combine those two metals, and those in power know this, you get synergistic toxicity. Peer-reviewed study proves the combination of those two metals can increase overall toxicity by as much as 10,000%, 100 times worse. And so we have that combination now in all of us. And aluminum, bioavailable aluminum, for those that try to debunk this issue, say, well, aluminum is common in their strata, we should expect to see it everywhere. No, not free-form aluminum. Free-form aluminum does not exist in the environment naturally. If it's free-form, it's been mined, refined, and dispersed. So again, if we can't breathe, Lance and George, without sucking in these nanoparticles, and we all are, every person we've tested, hair, blood, urine, we're packed with these metals. That's a fight for life right here, right now. And what else they're adding to this mix, as you just mentioned, sea spray is one example. There's hundreds more we know of, many more we don't. We don't know what they're doing to us at any given point in time.
And, you know, it's frightening. Let's talk about, that's a patent I pulled last night about graphene oxide nanoparticles from cloud seeding. And everybody know on our show, a lot of people know about the graphene and the benzene sheeting that was in the vaccine. We've heard all those stories and we've covered a lot of it, but clearly this is not something you want to be breathing into your lungs. Your lungs are probably one of the more susceptible organs to, you know, dispersants that you're taking in. You got access to a plane that probably will never happen again. Can you explain to the audience, what you used that plane for, or what that access was, and why they're never going to give it to you again, and what you discovered?
We gained access to a NOAA flying lab, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab. It was a very significant expense. We also took a private jet testing platform to even higher altitudes. But we put top scientists in that, a scientist, a geomicrobiologist from Minster Polytechnic in New York. We took that aircraft to altitude, took samples, processed them at RPI, and found exactly what we knew we would find, starting with aluminum nanoparticles. We sampled what heavy aircraft were emitting, and that's exactly what we found, exactly what we expected to find. This is all in the dimming, all on film, all on the record. And about the aluminum nanoparticles, people would wonder, why would they use aluminum? Obviously, it's, again, toxic to all life forms, no exceptions. So in the dimming, they can also see me at an international geoengineering conference confronting the world's most recognized geoengineer after his 3.5-hour symposium of attempting to push the proposal, what he claimed was a proposal. We know it's been going on for 80 years, since immediately after World War II, of dumping tens of millions of tons of aluminum nanoparticles into the atmosphere annually. Why would they use aluminum? He explained that in his symposium because of its high albedo, its high reflectivity. That's what they're trying to do, reflect some of the sun's incoming thermal energy, and its low coagulation rate. The particles tend not to coagulate and make a bigger particle, which descends faster, which they don't want. So I confronted him, have you done any toxicological studies, anything, environmental or human? And his first answer was, well, we've looked at atmospheric particulate loading. There's a lot of particles up there, like a few more won't hurt. Wait a minute, before they cut me off. Those particles aren't aluminum. Have you studied aluminum? And you can see this on film on the record. I caught him flat-footed. He said, well, no. Could terrible things happen tomorrow? We don't know. Of course they know. Of course they know this is going to degrade and debilitate populations, lower our IQs precipitously. Every conceivable neurological disease, respiratory disease, they know this. The sick and dumbed down population is a lot easier to control. And they banned me, by the way, Lance, from subsequent conferences for asking that question. So again, this is mind-numbing, man. The people can't see this is going on. It's mind-numbing.
For everybody out there, you wonder why there's aluminum in the toothpaste. You wonder why they want you to use aluminum cooking utensils. They want you to use the utensils you use in those pans of aluminum. There's a reason, because all that stuff, if you guys know a lot about the third eye, if you know a lot about the, why they don't want you to have that, you can go look that up. The calcification of the pineal gland, you can start, examining that, and you'll start to understand why. They want a dumbed down population. They want you to be stupid. They want us all to be AOC. They don't really want you to be, somebody that's a thinker, that's not part of it. But let's talk about this, and shame on any of the military that are participating. Shame on you guys for allowing this bullshit to happen. If anybody has the power to stop as a group, and if you participated, you're some real scumbags. U.S. military documents from decades ago openly planned, and I quote, owning the weather by 2025. We're in 2026 now. We're living in weather warfare nightmare. And is the military the main operator? Do you feel like that they're the main culprit that's, executing this nefarious plan and plot, Dane?
Yes, you're correct. With you on all points, all your observations. You're right on track, Lance. And yes, we have militaries from all over the globe actively or passively participating. And when we have, for example, the COP climate conferences, and George and Lance, if you've heard of those, that's the big international climate conferences. What are they really doing there? Are they really discussing changing business as usual? No. What they're doing behind closed doors is forcing countries to actively or passively participate in climate engineering. And who is the biggest player of all? Simply by matter of size, the U.S. military, by far. U.S. military has 3 times more aerial tankers than all other militaries in the world combined. So again, you have a whole industry that is profiting off this. These are the disaster capitalists, and I would compare them to pirates filling their pockets with loot on the deck of a sinking ship. On the current trajectory, no one gets out alive. And for those that think that's impossible, everything will magically work out, and good luck with that. Good luck with that, because we see right now around the globe collapsing everything. Ecosystems, fisheries, global pelagic fish populations, the food fish down 90%. I mentioned the plankton earlier already. And again, they're doing their best. Those in power, those who print the money from behind the curtain, are doing their best to feed normalcy bias in the population until the last possible moment, to keep the population from panicking, to keep the proverbial pitchforks and torches moment from happening, so the population doesn't start to go look for those responsible. They want to certainly try to hide the gravity of what's unfolding until the last moment, but we are perilously close to that moment.
Dane, let me ask you this. As a percentage, how many people do you think are actively participating across the entire globe? Do you think it's 3%, 5%? And how many people have active knowledge? Because there's an interesting thing that I want to point out to the audience, that it seems like the globalist population, the elites, clearly know more about this than we do, because it's no surprise that we're seeing Oprah Winfrey, Jeff Bezos, and so many others, Zuckerberg, building these massive underground bunkers. They seem to think that they're gonna ride this out, that when this kicks off, that they're gonna go down in their bunker and they're gonna survive this, what's gonna happen to the planet. Because there's something going on called Venus syndrome, potentially, for you guys that you don't know, and it has to do with Arctic methane eruptions. But let me ask you first, Dane, ask this first. What do you think the people that are in the know, that are actively participating in this, the 150 or the bankers, call it whatever it will, what do you think the percentage of the planet actually knows what they're doing and are actively, perpetuating and moving this forward, this operation?
It's a small percentage that actually consciously are facing the totality of what's unfolding. And yes, they are building bunkers. Zuckerberg's bunker in Hawaii is $100 million bunker, something in that range. And the people that build those bunkers are completely buried with orders now, because people further and further down the ladder are realizing what's unfolding very quickly. But you do have those that even higher up in the food chain are still consciously under the delusion that technology will somehow save themselves from themselves. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, we're trained as a society to believe technology will somehow always save us. How's that working out so far? And we're about to find out the hard way. This is a non-linear equation. I cannot state that with enough emphasis. People think that these earth changes take millennia to play out, or centuries. This is not like any other era in Earth's geologic past. And we're literally the occupants of a car going 100 miles an hour, 5 feet from impact. We can pump the brakes all we want at this point. Collapse is a given. It's simply, can we alter the equation enough before collapse to salvage some of the Earth's life support systems so that someone might make it through what's coming? And that's how dire our situation is. And for people who want to sit down and not try because they're not guaranteed a Disney happy ending, that we see and we're trained to want. Everything has to have a happy ending. I would argue the happy ending is knowing that you did your absolute best to do what you know is right, and you didn't yield to this insanity. If your child was in a burning house and you knew you had almost no chance of saving them, would you not try? What kind of life is that, to sit down and do nothing? So anyway, we face a very grave situation, but I would argue if there's a point and purpose to us being here, Lance and George, certainly there's no battle greater than this.
And I've never liked big government. I'm a true constitutionalist at heart. I've seen the nefarious plotting of government agencies that tell us one thing. For example, democracy is a specific thing, but really, it's a monetized system. As a contractor, I saw them, using capital and using resources, and it had nothing to do with spreading with democracy. It had to, giving access to the world bankers and other powerful. Oil industry or mining industry companies, or powerful people, giving them access to making more money. Talk about NASA, the FEA, and mainstream media. They all want to deny. They get out there. Again, they're lucky that myself and George were never president of the United States. There's lots of mainstream media people that I would shut them off tomorrow. There's a lot of channels that would lose their licenses and would go out of business instantly. Too bad for the shareholders. They say you invested in the wrong thing. And I would shut them down. I wouldn't allow it to happen. But of course, I'd be more weaponized than they would ever allow. They'd probably assassinate me as quickly as they could. But NASA and the FAA and mainstream media, they all deny chemtrails exist. And I want to be careful. Of course, that word. Let's say geoengineering doesn't exist. how deep is the cover up? You know, what happens to the scientists, whistleblowers who try to tell the truth? I'm sure you've been attacked. They've probably called you kooky or nutty or conspiracy theorist and all the names they use. And those labels just mean you're over the target. But all of these groups seem to be participating. Again, if you're part of these groups and you're participating, unbelievable that you would do this to your friends, your family, your loved ones, your children, and your grandchildren. Unfucking believable. I'm disgusted. And honestly, in my personal opinion, you should be executed for this behavior. But of course, that, you know, my opinion won't be popular. But Dane, they seem like there's so many of them telling us this isn't happening, and this and all the information you've got is spot on. And let me say this: Dane can back up every single thing he's got. If you go to his website, you're going to find out that all the facts are there. You know, we see this. You know, they're doing such a good job. How do you think that's being orchestrated?
Well, again, when you have programming that starts from birth, and let's take the medical industrial complex as a stunning example that still to this day hold to the mantra safe and effective with injections that contain neurotoxins. You can't inject neurotoxins without a lot of downstream negative effects, again, mercury and aluminum, and yet the whole industry and almost all of those in it toe that line. So the same is true in this case. There are people that convince themselves consciously that what they're doing is somehow needed, necessary. Let's look at the Milgram experiments, for example. For those that are familiar with the Milgram experiments, that proved 90+% of the population will do whatever they're told. So, including in that case of those experiments, what they thought was administering a lethal shock to an innocent person on the other side of a one-way mirror. That's what those experiments were about. Easy to look up that. But it's a very sad testimony to human nature. 90+% of the population willing to administer what they believe to be a lethal shock, so long as someone they believe to be an authority was telling them to do so. That's mindless, moralist order following, and that needs to end. Our military brothers and sisters need to remember the oath they took to protect their countrymen from all threats, foreign and domestic. They can do whatever they want to us, Lance and George. And as I told you last night, Lance, we know we have polymer fibers and graphene in the rain. Our tests with University of Minnesota prove that. Those are used militarily. Those two elements are used militarily as biological carrier platforms to carry a weapon, bioweapon from the clouds to the ground. What's to prevent those in power when they feel they're really losing control from putting something very lethal in this mix and leveling the playing field overnight? What's to stop them? Why would we think that they wouldn't do that?
Yeah, and it's a terrible thought when you think about the power they control and how they could easily do it with the flip of a switch. Let's talk about what they've been doing to the weather in Iran. Iran in the news, of course, for a number of reasons. We know what's going on there, unless you've been living under a rock. But you have some direct information about how they've been controlling Iran's weather for a very long period of time. Can you explain that to the audience?
Certainly. Again, climate engineering is the crown jewel weapon of the controllers. To state this over, the weapon with which they can, have been, and continue to bring populations to their knees without the populations ever even knowing they're under assault. That's over and above the chemical and biological aspect here. So in the case of Iran, we know that their precipitation has been cut off and diminished, dispersed for 40 plus years. Their meteorologists, and they're as sophisticated as ours, have stated this on the record officially. The former president of that country, who was just killed, by the way, in the first strikes that took place in Iran, they took him out, even though he was the former president, because he went to the floor of the UN to state that NATO and Israel were cutting off the precipitation to Iran. And again, they can see what's going on. We're not guessing here. And they're doing the exact same thing to U.S. citizens. I did a presentation over a decade ago, Engineered Drought Catastrophe, Target California. We can speculate on motives and agendas, but the fact that climate engineering operations, again, involving our own military, are cutting off precipitation to U.S. agricultural lands, helping to fuel forest fires. We have a military document, forest fires as a military weapon. I mean, this goes deep. So in the case of Iran, again, precipitation cut off, you destabilize food production, therefore you destabilize populations, you make them much easier to control. Same thing happening in Africa for decades. Those countries were their precipitation disrupted and cut off, forcing behind closed doors those governments to allow U.S. occupation. U.S. military bases. We have, what, 800 U.S. military bases in everybody else's backyard and on their border. How many foreign military bases do we have in the U.S., Lance and George? None. Zero. But our bases are everywhere else, and that's not by accident. And this has been a covert weapon to force that and facilitate that. And the same kind of weather warfare is being waged on U.S. civilians. So we ought to ask ourselves, again, are we any more important to those in power than the Iranians or the Palestinians? No, we're in the same category.
I think the answer is a resounding no.
Lance, I got to ask this question because I asked him.
Yeah, sure.
I think before the show started. So a lot of people always show videos of this when it's snowing. The snow looks like, I don't know, styrofoam. Even when they try to put a flame to it, it even melts like styrofoam. What can you tell us about that? Inquiring minds want to know.
There's a lot of artificially nucleating agents in this, and polymer fibers are part of that. These are patented processes. Your listeners can search geoengineeringwatch.org, massive list of patents. They'll find hundreds there. So again, this is hard science, and the elements that are in that frozen precipitation make it behave very differently than a naturally nucleated snow. So it also creates baseball and softball size hail, which is about to happen in Texas again. They're saying 3.5, 4-inch hail. I mean, really, it's now every single storm. And this is literally their desperation with creating a short-term cool down where Texas was 106 degrees in February in the middle of winter. They don't care about the consequences. So that material tends to sublimate, which means much of it transitions from a solid to a gas and bypasses the liquid phase. So you don't get nearly as much runoff. And we're feeling the effect of this right now in the Colorado River drainage. Those two reservoirs, the two biggest in the country, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, are near dead pool. 40 million people depend on those reservoirs. So are we not the victims of weather warfare too, just like Iran? And let's look back, the beginning 30 seconds of our weekly broadcast at Geoengineering Watch, commercial-free, non-political. I've done 550 something in a row. I've never missed a week. First 30 seconds, President Lyndon Johnson in 1962, 64 years ago, stating we had the power to control the world's cloud layer then, and he who controls the weather controls the world. How much farther have they come since then? So back to the water in the Southwest, and that's coming to a head right now. This summer is going to be beyond brutal.
I want to ask you something,
Yeah.
Dane. You know, Tennessee just banned all climate engineering over their state. There's lots of legal battles. Tennessee's making their move. I don't know how they got that done, but my hat's off to them. You've gone to a lot of lawmakers. You've been in front of congressional members. I don't know if you've ever gotten in front of the president or vice president. I assume not. They probably don't even want to hear this kind of stuff. And shame on the administration for allowing this to go on. If you want to talk about the deep state and, you're going to clean out the swamp, right here. Here's one of the biggest programs that's going on, and yet you guys are turning a blind eye to it, focused on a lot of other garbage. You've got a Congress that is just a giant uniparty of assholes, worthless. I mean, there's such a word that, don't get me wrong, I think there's maybe 10 or 15 or 20 of them that are okay.
I'm with you.
The rest of them are cheating, lying, nefarious scumbags that only want to have power. Most of them have very low IQs. I'd challenge them that they have a very low IQ. If we averaged it across Congress, I'd be surprised if we could beat a 70 or 80 if you took all of them and measured them and then did an average of it. But my point is, Tennessee was able to get this done. What about any other states? Is anybody else going to get this passed? I mean, Colorado always claims, Mile High City, healthy people. Hold on, but I want to.
No, Tennessee. Wait, here's a question you could add to this, though. You say Tennessee banned it. How is Tennessee going to know if there's planes flying up there dumping stuff? How are they going to know? The government's going to deny it anyway. They denied JFK assassination. They denied all the other crap they've done throughout the years.
Good point. Very good point.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dane. Take it from there. Are there any Congress members that give a shit about this? Because I would think they would care about their children and grandchildren. Has this administration even maybe watched and I would call, if anybody's watching from the administration, maybe you guys should watch this documentary and get off your asses and realize that your kids, your grandchildren, your friends, your family, whatever, we're all living on the same planet last time I checked, unless you guys have already figured a new planet you're going to move to and you're going to leave us all behind. It would seem like this would matter. Dane, take it from there.
You guys are both correct. And to back up to George, you're correct, George. It's not enforceable. And there's Tennessee, Florida, Louisiana, Arizona. We hope to hear back today. Legislation there passed House and Senate last week. It's in front of the governor now. These are symbolic legislative bills, but the exposure matters because we're trying to put this issue on the radar to reach that, again, that proverbial pitchforks and torches moment. So our military brothers and sisters realize they're not participating in some planet-saving endeavor. They're participating in their own near-term demise, literally. So we hope that this legislation works to wake them up because, George, you are correct. There's no way to enforce this. And we are dealing with a lot of different states. Your summary of the criminal cabal masquerading as our government, Lance, I completely agree with you. The Uniparty, and interesting that so many of them hold dual citizenship to the country, which we obviously know which country that is. That's, of course, a deep concern for us as well.
Oh, you can say it, Israel. It's all right. Say it. We fucking go after Israel too. We don't give a shit.
I mean, how obvious can that be? At this point, who's the tail wagging the dog here, right? So, and I had, for the record, I had former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, who was very outspoken and against Israel as well. I had lunch with Cynthia some years back in LA. And she told me that she was told if she didn't sign an oath to Israel, she would be a one-term congressperson. And she has way too much honor to sacrifice her integrity there. And in fact, she was a one-termer.
I'd like to see a copy of this oath so we could show it. That'd be great.
So would I. I don't know that even she was given a copy of that, but she is, if you know who Cynthia McKinney was, and she's done a lot to try to expose what's happening in the Middle East. And that's exactly what she told me to my face. And there are, as you stated, Lance, there are some good apples in this bunch. Congressman Lee Gilreath from South Carolina. Lee's a stand-up guy, former military, very outspoken on this issue. He's dedicating his whole life and career to this. So there are some out there. Lisa Fink in Arizona representative, I just had an hour conference call with her. As far as this administration knowing, they know. I've had an hour video conference call with Marla Maples. You guys know who that is? And
yeah, we do know Marla. She's friends with a friend of ours. We're going to try to get her on the show, as a matter of fact.
So Marla knows and cares about this issue. And I can't imagine that she would not have let Donald know about. Obviously, they know. And you're correct, as I think we agree, that everybody we see on the stage here are simply puppets at the end of strings of those who control from behind the curtain. Doesn't matter their political stripe. They're just people designed to polarize populations. RFK Jr. also interviewed me for an hour, and he was leaned on to do so by some important people. They called me as well, said it would happen. And you're also correct. They've done nothing but cover this issue up. And
what was his reaction, RFK Jr.? Because, of course, I would call out Donald Trump as commander-in-chief. You could literally pass an executive order tomorrow that all geoengineering by the United States would be dead stopped in its tracks. Now, that wouldn't be enough because, of course, they'd probably flip it back the other way once you're out, but at least we could get 2-3 years of no geoengineering. And RFK Jr., you claim you're trying to protect our health. What was his reaction after talking to you? Did he realize how serious this was? Or did he just act like a jerk off and do absolutely nothing and just kind of give you that yes man technique?
Well, apparently not. I mean, obviously he's joined this club, and I would argue once you're in the club, you're not at liberty to do anything you want to do. So,
what club?
The club of the criminal cabal that masquerades as our government club, and it's again they've done nothing but double down on the Dr. Phil show. Dr. Phil was interviewing Robert. A member from the audience stood up. This is all on film. Asked about this issue, mentioned me by name, at which point they shut her up immediately. And Robert looked very caught flat-footed, and he mentioned DARPA as if that's a revelation. DARPA's involved with everything bad. And then he alluded that, or implied, this is some jet exhaust issue. This isn't jet exhaust. That's a regurgitated official denial. So, and we have Lee Zeldin pretending he's going to be, quote, transparent, making a big official site saying it's just condensation, nothing to see here, move along. This is a tripling down of climate engineering. We're seeing a radical ramp up in the last year, not a scaling back. And I would argue the last president to actually draw a line in the sand with the powers that be was John F. Kennedy, and he didn't live long afterward, did he?
Yep, that was the reason why.
Yep.
All right. So let's talk about this because we want to give everybody in this case, listen, you're sounding an alarm here, probably louder than anyone. I guess if you were going to give our audience a direct message of what they could do, we got a lot of patriots and constitutionalists living here, got a lot of conservative Americans, got a lot of people that realize that division and chaos is a tool. I always talk about unity on the show. I don't directly not attack both sides of the aisle. We regularly go after both sides because I know that it's really traitors and patriots. And I tell people that, your neighbor, whether they're liberal or otherwise, you have to look at that we probably agree on 80 or 90% of the topics. Nobody wants to allow something to continue that's going to jeopardize their family. That's common sense. Nobody's going to want to just intentionally allow their children or grandchildren or their their husband, wife to be executed quietly, but that's what's happening. So if you could give some people some homework, and if they were going to do something, and I don't care whether you're going to recommend they take the link for the documentary and, jam the feeds nonstop today, post it over and over again into every congressional member you can find, or whether or not they're going to fill up their email boxes or fill up their phone lines about geoengineering. Because listen, guys, you could spend 10 minutes and just absolutely go all in on making sure that that your local congressional members, they're all over X. Donald Trump's on True Social. Dan Scavino's over there. JD Vance. You could literally just take the link for the documentary and said, why don't you guys get off your asses and fix this? You could send them, because I'm going to tell you this. If we don't batter them, I personally think that they need more than that. But if we were going to batter them, you could batter them through information. And Dane, what other suggestions you can make or you can add to what I just said?
You just gave a very correct outline of what needs to be done. When I started this battle 20 plus years ago, I could only hear my own voice coming back at me. Nobody listened to anything I had to say, no matter how much data I had. That's changing rapidly. And this issue is not like any other. You can't put this issue in the rearview mirror like you can 9/11 for people that think that steel structure high-rise buildings fall down from nothing. In the case of Building 7 at free fall speed, obviously those buildings were demoed. And we have peer-reviewed study, as we talked off the air, Richard Gage, peer-reviewed study, Building 7 came down from controlled demolitions, but nobody seems to care because they can put it in the rearview mirror and pretend it didn't happen. You can't do that with this issue. This issue is getting bigger and more ominous in front of the windshield every single day. This is an extremely immediate existential threat. We can't run and hide from this. If we don't deal with this, all other causes and concerns, no matter how valid they may be in and of themselves, will very soon become moot. So we have to deal with this biggest hole in the bottom of the boat, and every single one of us can make a huge difference by doing exactly what you outlined, Lance. And if they email, a link to the dimming is an excellent start, because that's the A to Z on this issue, irrefutable proof, and not just to elected officials who we know so many of are compromised, bought, sold, paid for anyway, but to heads of environmental groups, farm groups. The list is endless, and you mail that out to whatever contacts are appropriate there. Make your message, again, peaceful, professional, but also CC as many other aware and awake people as you can. Openly CC them, so whoever you're sending that link to knows a whole lot of people are waiting for their reply. Makes it a lot harder for them to just shirk it off. So again, starting those spot fires of awareness, if we can start enough of those so that they can't be stomped out, and we push this issue to the full light of day, Lance, the fur will fly. And our only chance of stopping this, as you outlined correctly earlier, is to wake up our military brothers and sisters, defense contractor families, and individuals, so that they know they're literally participating in their own extremely near-term demise, and we stop this from the inside out.
Yeah, and for the audience, Dane, it takes a much more professional manner. I suggest, hey, scumbag, what are you going to do about this? That's how the email should be titled. Blind carbon copy, do whatever you want. Or, hey, shithead, this isn't what I'm paying for you. Why don't you fucking fix this before you kill us all? My recommendation is the time for niceness is over with. You got to take the gloves off of these people because they're unethical. They lack integrity. They lack morality.
I agree.
There's so many narcissistic and selfish people. All right, listen. We're out of time for today. Get over there, follow Dane. Dane, it's Geoengineering Watch, or what is it? Or
Geoengineeringwatch.org.
Okay, and then what about your social media?
God, that's taken care of for me. Real Geoengineering Watch, I think, is our X. It's all on our site. Yeah. It's all on our homepage.
Share this far and wide. Don't sit on your ass. Do something today. Make a difference. Let these congressional members know. Let your local government officials know that you're not going to put up with this bullshit, that you're tired of it, and you want them to take care of this now. Do the same thing with the administration at the highest levels. Of course, that's how we do it here on the Big Mig Show. We're offensive, we're obnoxious, and we're not going to just sit around with our thumbs in our asses, that's for sure. All right, listen, we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, the Crypto Power Hour, 7 a.m., the #1 crypto show on Rumble. You'll catch us the rest of the week here at 11 a.m., Monday through Friday, as always. George B., what's your last words of wisdom for the audience?
It's Tuesday, right?
Today is Tuesday.
It's Taco Tuesday, but I ain't got no taco. All right, you guys have a blessed day. See you tomorrow.
I might have to let it drop. Said got it hella big, had to put it back again, get it like it. Said had to put it hella big, had to put it.
Are you ready to stand up for your community and support your local sheriff? Join the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association and become a vital member of the Sheriff's Citizens Posse. At CSPOA.org, we empower citizens like you through weekly webinars, arming you with the knowledge to back your constitutional county sheriff. Together, we can uphold our Constitution and ensure liberty and justice for all. Your community needs you now more than ever. Visit CSPOA.org and join the Sheriff's Citizens Posse today. Make a difference. Stand for freedom. That's CSPOA.org. Your country, your fight, your future.
What if you could predict your financial future? And what if you could trade on it? Introducing Block Trust IRA. The future in your hands. An astonishing 88,000 millionaires were created last year from the Bitcoin boom, and you could be next. Block Trust IRA is the only crypto management firm powered by AI-driven strategies, ranked #1 in the world by Bitcoin Magazine. The Block Trust IRA platform is built for everyone, from first-time buyers to seasoned investors. Predictive AI technology that was once only reserved for insiders and elites is now available to you. It's time to leave the old buy and hold strategies behind. Your assets are protected with military-grade security, offline cold storage, and $200 million in insurance. Visit BlockTrustIRA.com to book your free consultation and ask how to claim up to $2,500 in deposit bonuses today. Bitcoin changed the game. AI changes the strategy.
Hi folks, I'm here today to introduce you to the Prepper Bar from PrepperBar.com, the most unique precious metals product we have seen in a long time. These 62-gram bars are perforated and easily broken down into your choice of 3 different sizes to fit a multitude of needs. Whether it be from asset protection from inflation, economic turmoil, or its unique utility for barter and trade, the Prepper Bar makes a perfect gift for all the precious metal lovers out there. Exclusively made here in the USA and selling out fast. Available in both gold and silver, these slim Prepper Bars fit neatly in your wallet, and their utility enables use in any situation.
Forged through rigorous training and honed by the finest instructors on Earth, these K9 units serve beside our nation's warriors as they fight to preserve what we cherish. When these warriors complete their duty, the Warrior Dog Foundation provides them with a home deserving of the service they've given us all. At our state-of-the-art kennels, they receive rehabilitation and care suitable for heroes, because that's what they are. Be a part of giving them a future today. Visit WarriorDogFoundation.org.